Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kramer. I have Jim with us. We are going to get into some of that inner game stuff. I know we're going to be talking a little bit about trusting your team. And for some of our listeners who have small teams, this is going to be valuable to set the right foundation, the right mindset for creating a successful business. And that is not always something that we do very successfully as a one man or one woman captain, right? You've got to have the team behind you. I want to welcome you to the show first and foremost, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for having me, Alicia.
So, inner game. That's all that mindset stuff. Now, you have a philosophy that I would love to sort of kick things off with. Let's start by diving right in. We're going to dive right in and just go into some of those important mindset shifts that entrepreneurs, small business owners, even medium-sized business owners need to make in order
Yeah.
to really grow at the level that they want to.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of thinking out there about needing to think positively and be positive and actually manifesting these things. And I'm a huge believer in that and the science behind all of those things. But I think alongside that, I often misquote Sherlock Holmes, the fictional London detective. He said, whenever you remove the impossible, no matter what remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. In a business setting, I've changed that. So I believe that whenever you remove the blockers to your success, what must remain is you being successful. Um, and I firmly believe that, and it's a fairly negative tone on what we do. So I always cover that and put that in the context of be positive in your mindset about your outcome, be positive in being there, be positive in being successful, but be pragmatic and practical in how you're going to get there. And it's that pragmatic how you're going to get there that gets you into thinking about, well, hang on, this could trip me up. This could make the whole business fail. So how do I stop that thing from happening? What's that blocker and how do I stop it from happening? And once you've stopped it from happening, you'll find another one because that's just how businesses work. But then once you've identified the next one that's going to stop you being successful, then you get onto the next one. And eventually, once you've got through the three or four biggest things that are going to stop you being successful, a bit of success will come. And then once you've gone beyond that and you've removed some more blockers, success must come. It's just a logical extension of how you do it. But I like the idea of actively trying to identify the things that are going to stop you being successful. I
Okay.
think way too many
This is
people
so
ignore
good.
that.
So good. Can you share with us some of the common things that you're seeing when you're working with your clients? I'm sure you're seeing themes,
Yeah.
common common things, all unique in their own sort of way, but yet as I've noticed this, and I'm sure you have too, we're a lot more alike than we like to admit.
Completely. 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 I mean, it very much depends on the size of business that you're operating on. What I find most with small startups, and I do a lot of fundraising as well as consultancy work and strategic advisory work. I find with small companies, they completely forget the concept of product market fit. They have a really good idea. They believe it's going to work. And to be honest, it probably will work. But how they've chosen to implement it, how they've chosen to present it to the market, how they've chosen to try and engage customers in it isn't working. And they miss out that step. You've got to validate what you're doing in a product market fit world. And they miss that step out because they're so passionate and positive thinking that they've missed the point of actually just making sure that everyone else believes the same thing. So that's a very common thing of you've not validated it and you've not identified the blocker of validating it, and validating will tell you two or three more blockers, and they're normally easy to fix, But if you're not looking at them and you're not looking to fix them, then you can procrastinate for a while before you get there. In larger companies, I find that it's normally legacy. We've always done it this way. And it's like, well, that's cool. It's great. And that got you here. But your customers are all expecting something else from you. They're all moved on. Everyone's moved into the latest technology or the latest experience, or your competitors done something different and you're still the old thing. And they're no longer looking at how do they engage with their customers in a proper way. And that's a blocker for them moving forward. They kind of feel like they've arrived. And very often they have. They're turning over 30 million, 100 million, a billion. They've arrived. Um, but the world doesn't stop. You've got to keep looking at what's the next blocker. And very often the next blocker is the competitors have moved on, your customers have moved on, expectations moved on. So if you're not constantly looking for those, what's the blocker to the next piece of success? You don't identify it. And if you don't identify it, you can't deal with it.
Reading between the lines, so to speak, what I'm hearing is this tendency to become overly attached. We become so attached to our vision, so attached to our our level of success that we stop innovating. We
Yeah.
stop forward thinking. We become kind of rigid.
Yeah.
And in business, in life, you can't,
Yeah.
especially, with the rate that technology and innovation is moving.
Yeah.
So when you're working with someone and you're identifying those blockers, what do you need to do to help shift someone's mindset so they can get past that?
Yeah, that's a great question because I've done huge numbers of transformations. I've transformed businesses worth hundreds of millions and billions on occasion. And it's funny because everyone wants to do a digital transformation or this or an agile or any of these types of methodologies of working together. And it's always that they want to transform and create and grow and change their business to become more successful. And yet every one of them is a cultural transformation. If you don't get your culture in your business operating, and the culture comes down to pure mindset, if you're not thinking about your business in the right way, if your team isn't thinking about your business in the right way, if you're not getting your team to come along with you on this journey of where you're going next, you're never going to remove the blockers. And so I often come across the challenge that far too many managers, and I'm going to say managers because I don't think they're leaders at this point, far too many managers are in a commanding control. I'm the manager. I know what we're trying to achieve. I'll allocate tasks. I'll tell people what they need to do. I'll explain to teams how I need them to operate. And that kind of used to work because we didn't really know very much better. Now, the step for me, at least, going from a manager to a leader, is actually giving up an element of control and trusting your team. You have a team, and whether you're a one-man band or you're running a billion-dollar business, you have a team, one-man band, and that includes me. I have lots of partners I use. They become my team, and I need to respect and trust in them that I've picked the right team around about me to help me grow. If you're in a big company, I firmly believe that one of the keys to success is breaking your large departments into small teams and then allocate them something that they can be really good at. Give them a domain. Your job is to do this, and it could be increase loyalty by 5%. It could be reduce delivery times by 3 days, but give them something that they can own and trust that you've got the right team to actually deliver on that. And to be honest, if you can't trust that you've got the right team, that's not a team problem. That's either your problem or it's a hiring problem. It's not the team's problem. The team are good at what they do. You just don't either believe in them or you've hired the wrong team to do the wrong thing. But I firmly believe culture is huge. You need to, as going from a manager to a leader, you need to understand that you've hired these people for a reason. Allow them, set the objectives that you want. Then that could be go away and find the blockers that are stopping us being successful. That could be once you've found the blocker, come back and tell me and we'll give you more budget or whatever those challenges are. to make us successful. But yeah, giving up control and trusting in your team is a huge part of, in my mind, being successful.
So right now, there are people listening and their subconscious mind is firing off the warning bells,
Yeah,
the limiting beliefs. I can't trust my team. Look at how incompetent everybody has been for me in the past. Remember that thing that that person did that almost bankrupted me. There's all of that stuff that oftentimes stems from a lack of proper training, but it also comes down to like what are some of your hangups coming into business to begin with? You know, you got trust issues, you've
yeah,
got, you know, some unresolved ego stuff, right? Whatever it is.
yep,
So, leadership is something that is frequently talked about. Oftentimes, you hear it more in like the corporate setting than you do in smaller businesses. But even if someone is operating a very small business where maybe they only have a couple of employees, I believe, and perhaps you know, clarify. I believe that developing that leadership mindset from the get-go, as opposed to just being a manager, being a, you know, the worker bee in your own business, and then you've got other people and you're sort of micromanaging and, you know, sort of delegating, but not really leading.
yeah.
I'd like to talk about that a little bit and maybe share some mindset shifts that people can start to contemplate. Right? We're not even saying anybody's got to like take the plunge here
No, not
and
at all. I think everyone will find their own time, and they'll have their own trigger that will make them suddenly go, "Pfft, that's a light bulb moment for me." My light bulb moment was working with the Guardian newspaper. I launched the Guardian into America. And I loved that. The boss there, my client there, was amazing. A lady called Tanya Cordry. And this is, oh, wow, this is 2007, so a long while ago. I'm very old. Um, and we brought in a bunch of people from Silicon Valley to help us and they didn't do any work for us. They purely gave us mindset changes, understanding different. And prior to that, I had very much done a lot of traditional project management. This is the plan, you do this, you do that. How are you getting on? What's your progress? And that was my light bulb moment of I don't know everything. And to be honest, if I pretend that I know everything, we're all going to fail. If I try and know everything, I'm going to blow up and I'll be in a hospital next week with a heart attack. And it was that point of understanding that actually the team is the team that becomes successful. I'm part of that. I'm only a small part of that. I lead, I set objectives, I take away their blockers to help them become successful so they can take away the blockers in the company and make the company successful. So it's very much an enabling role. And I view leadership as setting objectives and then enable. And that was my trigger point of saying actually this management thing doesn't work. It's limited in what you can achieve. Leading people, inspiring them, making them want to help, showing them how what they're doing is impacting on the business, allowing them to become part of the success story within the business. I help to deliver that. Those are all the things that people want in a working environment. And when you take those things away, those are generally why people resign and go to another job. So it has such a broad range of impact on what you're doing. And you're right, very few people I know have been formally trained in management. It's the classic Peter principle. You're promoted to the level of your own incompetence. And that's corporate world. You find someone who's really good at a job and you promote them, and then they're leading a team. And they're good at leading that small team. So you promote them again, and now they've got a big team. But you've never trained them in that process. So they start to fail. And it's like, well, you've taken someone who's really, really good at their job, good enough that you wanted to promote them, and you put them in a position where you're actually setting them up to fail. Why would you do that? Managing people, training them. So if you've got one or two employees, one, it's perfect for your one or two employees to understand what contribution they are. They feel part of the company, and you can bring them in with this leadership thing. but you're also training yourself. And once you go from 2 or 3 employees to 5 or 6, to 15 to 20, to 50 to 100. So it's a part of a training ground for you, but it also just makes everyone. And when you're in that environment and you've got the 1 or 2 people, what I've always found is when you make a mistake, the 1 or 2 people will quite happily tell you that didn't really quite work well. So it's a feedback loop that's easy. It's not an embarrassment feedback loop. It's not a we've ruined everything feedback loop. It's a friendly, we're all in this together feedback loop. And all of those things are just so key to success.
This is such valuable information we're talking about here. And oftentimes you'll hear the very, very common phenomenon, which is someone was an employee, maybe they were the top salesperson at an organization, and they're like, screw this place, I'm the one making all the money, I can do this better than anyone else. And so then they go out and they start their own thing. Or
Yeah,
the mechanic, who was the amazing, the amazing skills behind growing that business, but has no education in running a business. And so now you see this new business owner just sort of flailing and trying to learn how to hire properly, and how they don't know anything about training. They don't know anything about HR. They don't know anything about marketing,
yeah,
And business is such, it requires so many skills, soft skills and hard skills. And granted, we can't know them all, which is why we bring people in who are way better. But there needs to be constant, that constant drive, I would say, to grow
yeah,
yourself. And
yeah.
for people who don't have that, it's oftentimes a big struggle.
Yeah, I've tried to avoid, but I don't think we can. I've tried to avoid the classic, whenever you get into mindset, talking about the growth mindset and Carol Dweck's work in her book. And without that growth mindset, you're kind of done for. And there have been some clients that I've kind of walked away from because they are so rigid. I'm happy to work with clients and to help them understand why they need the growth mindset, but sometimes people just don't get it. But that growth mindset is just vital for you as an individual, for you as a leader, for you as a business owner or a manager or a leader within a corporation. You need to constantly asking yourself, what can we do better? What can I do better? What can my team do better? How can we come together and work better together? And without that, there is no growth. You may get an extra 1% in your sales, but that's not really growth. The company isn't transforming and evolving into this new beast, this new organization that can go out and take 1% growth and make it 10, 15, 20% growth. So the company is an organism, and the people in it are part of that organism that needs to grow. And the organism is fueled by this growth mindset of how can we constantly be doing better. But your example of a salesperson or a mechanic wanting, I can do this better. Very often that's why I get involved in companies, either to mentor them or if they need more than that, I will become chairman of the company so that I can have an active part in running the company to grow the skills of the individual to allow them to then go. And I don't expect to be a chairman of a company for 10 years. If I'm still there in 10 years' time, it would be fantastic that they like me so much. But my objective is to grow the leadership team so that they don't need me there, that they can go away and do it. So for me in that role, my role is to give them the environment and then point out the issues. So I'm very much a friendly critic to people in that regard. You don't I don't believe that in being a critic and teaching people you need to be brutal about it. I think you can do it nicely and friendly and help people to grow and evolve. But it's very common. You see that all the time in especially the technology world. I think Silicon Valley laid off hundreds of thousands of people 2 or 3 years ago, and every software engineer that got laid off suddenly became a startup founder the next week. And it's like you're a great software engineer, but you've not quite understood the broader range of skills that you need.
Yeah. This is definitely a good time for me to ask, how can our listeners connect with you? So you're full of wisdom, tons of experience, but you also offer a very valuable service. And I would love for people to have an opportunity to explore more of what you do and potentially bring you in
Yeah,
because I'm sure there are some people who are at that stage. So, can you share with our listeners how they can connect with you?
absolutely. The easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, and I'm Jim Stevenson on LinkedIn, and you see a face that's similar to this in the profile picture. Or my website is bletchleygroup.com, Bletchley group.com. We named ourselves after Bletchley Park, um, where Alan Turing created the world's first programmable computer. So it was very technology based back in the day, but we've evolved since then quite a lot.
Good frame of reference for those who are listening as opposed to watching. So, I want to thank you so much, Jim. I know we could have gone deeper, but this has definitely been a very rich conversation.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed every second, and I hope the listeners got something useful out of it. Thanks,
I
Alicia.
would be surprised if they didn't. So, on that note, I've got to thank our listeners. You know, we're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.